Hello out there, and today we are going to be talking about the 10 things that you need to know about this Tucson TS111. But first, guys, I am going to throw some specs up for this knife because, as you may well know, in these 10 things to know videos, I don't really hit all that kind of stuff. I sort of just go over the high points that reach out to me, not really going over every little detail. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. But for now, we're going to get into number one. How do I get it? Where do I get a Tucson? And honestly, when it comes to Tucson knives, that was the big thing holding me back from getting into them. I didn't have a lot of trust. I'd go on Blade HQ, I wouldn't see their models. I'd go on to any other distributor sites and I wouldn't see them. But then I'd go on eBay and there'd be a bunch of knives on eBay, and that's actually just sort of the way that Tucson does business. Now that said, you can get them on Amazon, you can get them in a number of different places now, but a vast majority of the sales that they do is through auctions online on eBay, believe it or not, and they ship directly from China where they're made. And that's how I got this knife. So sometimes it's sort of a crapshoot because when one of the models is new and in demand, it can go for a pretty significant amount of money. And after a while, after the hype maybe has calmed down and everybody who really wants one has one, it goes down just because that's what auctions do on eBay. And so Tucson lets the market sort of dictate the value of the knife, which is different and it's interesting. And it also, like I said, for me, took me a while to actually give them some credibility, just because I thought that was a very unusual and unorthodox way of conducting business. Now, this knife goes for around 66 bucks on Amazon as we speak. About a year ago, in May of 2019, I won an auction for it for right around 60 bucks. So that's how I got it, and I've had it for this long, and I was meaning to make a video about it, and I've talked about it on the channel, how it was such a good knife, and I wanted to make something, and I just kept putting it off until now. So here we are. That's how we get a Tucson knife, and that's how I got this specific one. Number two, the biggest talking point about this knife, guys, it's symmetry. This knife has symmetry in a way that just makes it so aesthetically pleasing. It's just great looking. There's so many different designs that I'm into, and there's so many things about knives that I like, but symmetry, whether it's a common shape or just a different kind of shape, doesn't matter what it is, I just really look for it. And you can sort of see just the way the lines and the curvatures mirror themselves from the handle to the blade. And when we see that, as you can see, like when you flip the knife over, you have the same curves on the bottom upside down as you do on the top. And what I mean by that is there's just like this nice little curve to the handle, and then that same looping curve down the spine of the blade. And what's really interesting is this knife would almost make more sense if you took the blade and flipped it. Imagine if this were upside down, right? And you had the grind and you started from here down. Like, that's a more traditional kind of blade shape, right? And I don't know, there's just so many ways of looking at this knife that it looks appealing in every single one of them. And then the way the knife looks closed, how it closes into the frame, it just looks excellent. So I'm super stoked about that. Yeah, so it definitely had me just by the looks, that is for sure. All right, number three, let's talk about in and around the butt. You guys are the dirty ones, man. This is a legitimate topic. In and around the butt, what I mean by that, two things. Number one of the things that can really bother you with a knife, and one of the things that really bothers me, is that sometimes on knives you'll just get a sharp end, and this knife was just really well shaped and figured out in that the best way to hold it, you can see where it just goes into the palm of your hand, but there's no sharpness, and it just is something that, I don't know, sort of jumped out at me when I was carrying it. The other thing, when we're talking about in is what we have here is a sort of lanyard hole. Not really a full lanyard hole, but we have a standoff and then an opening in the backspacer that allows for a lanyard to be looped through. I do not understand why every company can't embrace this sort of idea. It seems like common sense, but as we know, common sense is not that common, but that eliminates the need for a hole in the middle of your knife. And so great job by Tucson there. Really happy about that. All right, getting into number 4, that D2 blade. So what we have is D2 on our blade steel. All right, and D2 from Tucson for me has been pretty good. I will say that there has been maybe somewhat of a difference in performance versus Tucson D2 and other companies D2. But that said, it certainly does outperform some of the more budget stuff that is out there. So I don't have any complaints with it there. I really like the blade shape and the Wharncliffe style, and this has been very easy to resharpen. So maybe it's a little bit on the softer side since I'm able to resharpen it that easy, but still D2, I definitely do get that like better quality out of it versus a budget kind of steel. And again, for like the 5th time, it looks excellent. Number 5, that D2 though, it's a rusty one. I've had some issues, guys, issues with a number of different Tucsons and actually Ganzos. Those are the main companies that I've seen where I might carry a knife for a day, use it for a while, and then all of a sudden I'll just have a whole bunch of spots on it the next day. Whole bunch of rust spots. And I haven't really figured out why. I've been really trying to figure out what the variables are that are causing that. But you might be able to see, and probably not because there's so many fingerprints on it, but you might be able to see actually at the top of the spine here, and I'll insert a picture. There's a number of spots where I've had to like flitz polish because there was like a lot of rust that just left a mark. And it happens, you know, but it can happen super quick with this. And again, I'm doing some tests. If I do figure out what the cause of it and why that is happening, I'll definitely let you know. Some people have suggested it's a different type of D2. Maybe it's a different kind of heat treat. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is, and I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. But yeah, and just for size comparison while we're talking, I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. But yeah, it is something that is definitely something to keep an eye on if you are in the Florida kind of area, humid, maybe not maintaining your knives as often as you should, which can be something that I can be blamed for in that case. All right. Number 6, altered action. And one of the bummer kind of side effects of my experience with that kind of rust is that I did get rust inside the pivot of the knife to the extent that like it has negatively impacted the action. Now that said, I mean, negatively impacted the action. The action's still pretty freaking good. but it was on par with one of the other Tucsons. That's some of the best action I've ever had in a knife. So, I mean, it was very, very good. And it still is, but it's not ever going to be quite as good as it was unless I can change out some of the parts maybe inside, because, you know, I did get some rust, and I'll show you the pictures. It looks pretty crappy. Actually, literally looks crappy, because I guess there's some moisture, maybe the lubricant that was in there like sort of helped spread that rust, and so it just was not a good situation. That said, you know, is that going to happen with yours? Probably not. But it is something to definitely keep in mind, right? And I want to actually skip what I was going to go with for number 7 and move into a new number 7, points of construction. And this is one of the benefits of it, because this knife was really easy to disassemble. And so when I did disassemble it to take a look at it and clean it, all T8 hardware, very simple. The issues that I had actually very recently with the hardware on the case and Southern Grind shark tooth, this knife is actually set up the exact same way with the way that the standoffs are, except for the fact that you have T8s on each side. So if there was any kind of Loctite, you'd be able to like play off them and actually disassemble it with ease. So great job. I really like the way that this knife was put together because it was very easy to take apart. One sort of question mark though was when I first got this knife, what I was able to do, and here's a look at the lockup now, what I was able to do was occasionally, if I just moved the blade softly, there wouldn't be engagement. And that sort of took care of itself the first time I disassembled the knife. Super easy, but I put it back together and the engagement was there every single time. You can see the lockup is a little bit later, and I think that's just sort of the compromise, but the lockup is fantastic now. But out of box, you know, it did, never a safety issue, but it was something that I noticed if I was just like, if I really was intentional about it, I could get it to open without really locking up. So something that's a little bit weird. And I'm sure I can fix this, but when I put it back together, a little bit off center, but not going to take too many points off for that. All right, so the new number 8 is going to be some of the carbon fiber qualities. So this is a titanium frame lock, right? And the titanium actually looks pretty good with that design. You can see the light hitting it. Yeah, really do like the Tucson kind of identity that so many of their titanium designs have, as you can see right there. But the carbon fiber is always, for me, a big talking point, especially on a budget kind of knife. And this isn't that budget, but you know, you could get away with maybe some crappy carbon fiber. And we can all think of an expensive knife, a much more expensive knife that cheaps out instead of going the distance with something that's quality. And this is a pretty darn good piece of carbon fiber. It's not the nicest, flashiest, not necessarily the best pattern of anything that I've seen, but there's no voids. It's not slick. It's nice and matte. There's a good amount of traction. It's finished well. I mean, I don't have any problem with this whatsoever, you know, and what it has done, because a lot of the Tucsons that I've had are maybe older models and I hadn't had any of their carbon fiber stuff. It's given me confidence in the brand, just in what they're doing and what their models are like. And it's gotten me excited for Tucson as a whole. So it's funny how that little quality, how the carbon fiber is executed, just can make that big of a difference, but it sure does. All right, and then getting into number 9, we've got a roadblock of a clip. So here's the pocket clip. It's actually a good looking clip, I think. It's pretty stylish. You can see, and maybe I need to open the knife, but you can see that the pocket clip is actually connected when the knife is disassembled. So we don't have any visible screws from the outside, so pretty sleek there, you know, nice job with it. It carries well. It's very easy to take out of the pocket, but getting it in, it is sort of a little bit of a struggle. It's tight. It's tight, and it sort of snags when you're trying to push it into to pants or shorts quickly. And that's just something I found, and for me, it's a minor inconvenience where it's like, oh crap, come on, get in the pocket, let's go kind of thing. Some people who might be using this in a situation where they have to be quick and they have to be able to get it out in and out faster might look at this as more of an issue. But for me, it's something that's just a minor inconvenience, a nitpicky thing, but it's definitely one worth mentioning because clips matter to a lot of people. Finally, number 10, high value or overpriced? That's always the question, you know. Tucson, I don't know, when I first found out about Tucson knives, I didn't give them that much merit because I didn't really know what they were all about. And this is years ago now, when, you know, when the first models, I think, were coming out. I don't know how long it's been. But the point is that when you look at something and it doesn't have a wide kind of level of acceptance in the community or the marketplace, it's hard to really say that it's high value because it's nothing special and no one around you is going to think that it's special. I think we've gotten to the time with Tucson where the opinions that I'm sort of having are starting to spread more and more with the brand, and people are buying into the brand a lot more. If this were a knife that said Benchmade on it, or if we put a hole right there and called it a Spyderco, this could easily be double the price, easily. You know, there's a few at auction right now, and because it's been almost a year since I had mine, maybe it won't go for as much. You know, maybe you get this knife in the $50 price range. And if you could, I think it's a steal. You know, it's a great EDC. I don't remember if it actually made my top 10 of the year last year or if it was an honorable mention. I really don't know if it had a number, but it's a really good knife. It's a really, really good knife. And it's one of those slippery slope things where I was able to only pick up like one other Tucson for the rest of the year, but it's hard. Because you can go online, you can see those auctions and be like, that's a good looking one, that's a good looking one, that's a good looking one. And it's very easy to just like fall down that slope, I'm sure. Again, I've avoided it, but it's not for lack of what they are doing. Design-wise, appeal, actual usability, I mean, that stuff is all fantastic, all high marks. The corrosion thing, not that big of a deal for me because it's going to get used. You know, it's a knife, it's going to get used. Like it's not going to stay pretty. So, yep, I mean, got to take it apart, get rid of the rust, do whatever I can, and then keep it going. All right. So that's all I have, guys. Any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.